might be, and then also how that's important in making sure our homes don't lose too much heat energy. So let's go through these three different ways first. So the first way is radiation. Now you're quite familiar with this because you might have seen sort of heat sensing cameras, and this is because it uses infrared heat. Now infrared heat is a wave, it's an electromagnetic wave, and we all emanate it, so it comes from our bodies. This will be partly how a radiator might work, but it's something that all bodies give off, or everything that produces heat gives this off, and this can travel through a vacuum, and this is how we get heat energy from the sun. So because space is a vacuum, it can't go through conduction or convection, it must travel by radiation, which is the EM waves, the infrared waves that come from the sun. And so that's the first way. The second way is to look at conduction. Now, a very simple experiment. I've got a metal bar here, I've got a candle heating up one end, and what's happening are those particles are bouncing into each other. And when they bounce into each other, so you've got all these little particles along this, normally metal, because metal's a good conductor of heat, and because they vibrate as they get hotter, they vibrate more, they bounce into each other, and that heat is then passed along the metal bar, and you eventually feel it on your hand. So that's conduction. It's passing heat through the vibration and collision of those particles. Now, third way, convection. When I was growing up, I used to really love soup. My mum always used to say, you need to have your soup from the edge of the bowl, right? So, and I still do it to this day. If ever I'm eating soup, I will eat from the edge of the bowl. Now, the reason that she said that was because of something called convection. As the heat rises, it gets colder because it leaves the heat source, and it cools down and it goes down. So the colder air or colder fluid, because it's always fluid, it's either a liquid or a solid, a liquid or a gas, the cooler fluid is going to go down and the hotter fluid is going to go up. And as a result, you tend to get cold soup by the side. Now, this is called a convection current, and what's going on here is as particles get hotter, they become less dense. You know that sort of as air gets hotter, it expands. Same concept with liquids. So the part it's less dense. If it's less dense, it rises, and as it rises, it therefore displaces the colder air, which then sinks because that is further from the heat source, so it cools down, it gets more dense, and it can sink. So you've constantly got this movement of particles. So why is this important? Well, if we're looking at a home, homes lose heat energy, right? And one of the big things at the moment is making houses as economical as possible with their heat. Now, most of the heat that you get will come through the walls. Most of the heat you lose will come through the walls. And after the walls, it's actually the roof, because heat rises and goes up. The first house I ever looked at buying, it was a flat. It was a 3rd-story flat. They said they'd never even turn the heat on in the winter because the heat from the 2 flats below, or the 4 flats below, rose all the way up, and it made the upper flat almost completely warm during the winter. So they never actually needed to turn the heating on. It saved a lot of money. Roofs are often very heavily insulated with insulating foam. You can now insulate the walls because you have wall cavity. Windows tend to lose quite a lot of heat, but because of double glazing, they don't anymore. Double glazing is 2 panes of glass with a vacuum between. Now, a vacuum means that heat can still be radiated out, but it can't be conducted or convected through the window. So convection currents cause the heat to go up, the radiation comes out of the walls, and the radiation will also, and the conduction comes out of the walls, but radiation will also come out the windows.